Welcome, friends, back to Leading Theologically. I am Bill Davis, the Senior Director of Theological Education Funds Development at the Presbyterian Foundation. And joining me today is my colleague, Zoë Garry. Zoë, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Zoë is the Associate Director for Theological Education Funds Development. And as we kind of come to the end of this initial season that we've had, these last 5 episodes, I thought that today Zoë and I would do some reflecting on the themes that we have noticed of these 5 episodes and conversations, and share a little bit of our insight with you about them. So Zoë, I've had 5 conversations with different folks around the denomination and beyond the denomination, loosely related to theological education and its future. I wonder, are there specific things in each episode that have stood out to you, points of importance that you'd want to highlight for us?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one thing that was so great about this season was really the breadth of voices that we got. Starting off with Cece and Tony, the new moderators of our denomination. One thing that was so interesting about that episode that I really enjoyed was obviously the two of our moderators have just a breadth of experience. Breadth of experience as church members, as seminary students, as leaders, as pastors, and yet we got this preview into them at the very, very beginning. And how cool that is to see that even with the wide breadth of experience, getting to witness someone starting out and learning their role, learning their relationship. And you can really see that now, almost 2 months.
Right. Yeah, that episode was recorded in late August, right? Less than 2 months after they were elected as co-moderators. So that's, they were really fresh during that time. Yeah.
And you could see that they had such great energy together, even from the very beginning. So I love to see that. And also as a great reminder that even with the breadth of experience that we get, we still enter into newness and have these new opportunities and have these new relationships that we have to explore and learn about ourselves and learn with our partners.
Awesome. Right. Yeah. And I was just really grateful that Cece and Tony were willing to take time to join a conversation because, right, not only are they co-moderators, right, they still have the churches that they pastor, right? So it's all the things. And so
All the traveling, the
Tony,
speaking
yes, right.
engagements, their families,
Yes.
friends, keeping up with their
Yes.
communities.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Totally. So after the co-moderators, I had a conversation with my friend David Lamott. Right. He was fresh.
A good friend of yours, right?
Yes. Yeah. So he was fresh off of this TEDx Editor's Choice talk. And
Yeah.
we talked some about that, but we also talked about world changing and the intersection it has with theological education. Was there anything in that conversation, Zoë, that stood out to you?
Yeah, during that conversation, I could hear the Presbyterians like doing their own little wave for for the love of committees. Like finally, someone sees the Presbyterians, and just that highlight that we really have to do things together. That there's this false narrative that we have that is not a reliable telling of our history. That we do things alone. That there are these heroes. And I think that plays into a lot of our American culture of individualism that, or even some of the way that our American culture of individualism has our relationship with faith and God, and like it's me and my relationship with God. And it's like,
Yes.
there's more. It's me, my relationship with God, and my relationship to God's people and the church and the community and all of that. I really appreciated the way he painted the our need for community and constantly being in relationship with each other. And that's actually where movements and progress happen, is deeply within community and within those movements, and not in this individual hero ideal that
Yeah.
we tell ourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely right. So I want to just highlight too that weeks after that episode, or really the week after that episode dropped, is when Hurricane Helene happened in
Mhm.
Western North Carolina, where David lives. Was devastated, right? I had this other conversation with Richard Dubose and Carol Steele recently where they told us what's going on at Montreat, and just want to highlight how we can still around the country be supporting our loved ones and our colleagues in ministry in Western North Carolina, whether that's supporting Montreat or the
Mhm.
ministries of Black Mountain Presbyterian Church or Grace Covenant. There's important rebuilding work that
Yeah.
is happening still in Western North Carolina, and that takes all of us to do, right?
Mhm.
That's we have good committees and churches that can
Absolutely.
help
Yeah.
support the rebuilding of
Mhm.
Western North Carolina, and so I just want to highlight that as well. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. As someone who did a lot of construction work,
yeah,
you can't do anything by
right,
yourself, and
right,
it's dangerous to do it by
right,
yourself, just with
yeah,
like the tools and the need to see and talk things out and really kind of make sure that you're being wise in your decisions.
yeah,
None of that can be done alone.
yeah,
From the fundraising aspect, but also
right,
the physical work has
yeah.
to be done in community. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So beyond after that conversation with David, the next episode was with our colleague Brady Radford from
Mhm.
Atlanta. What about that conversation stuck out to you?
Yeah, Brady had just, amazing, insights on just the way that our church is changing. There was a quote that he said, "There's no more cookie cutter carbon copy ministry." That so much of what we thought was that there was this recipe of, okay, if we do this and this and this,
Mhm,
then we'll have a thriving church, then we'll have
mhm,
a growing congregation. And we really need that contextualization
mhm,
within our churches and within our communities, and even within our education, our theological
mhm.
education, that
Yeah.
we have different pastors in different communities and different churches that are coming up,
Mm,
and these invitations of creativity, um, and reimagining kind of what ministry looks like in these different contexts, I think is
yeah.
really important.
Yeah. And so I love that the about the contextualization of ministry
Mhm.
too, right? When I talk to folks about, our Presbyterian seminaries, and one of the questions that people ask is, do we have too many seminaries? And my
Mhm,
answer
mhm.
is often, no, we don't have enough, because
Yeah.
geographic contextualization and
Mhm.
the contextualization to which um, we do ministry matters more today than it I think
Absolutely.
has ever mattered before. And
Mhm.
related to that, right? We are recording this a few days after the most recent election, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that Brady said that is in my mind today is that all ministry is transitional, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
we are going through a rapid, radical, hard transition, not just as a church, but as a nation.
Yeah.
And that is hard work to be a part of, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So I just want to acknowledge that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think for you as someone who just came from a transitional
Yeah.
ministry,
Yeah.
just how important that specific training was in that
Mm,
context, but how applicable it is to
yes.
every position that you're probably gonna be having in the
Right.
future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I joke with folks that I think transitional ministry training could be part of our
Oh,
seminary curriculums,
yeah,
right? Um,
absolutely. Yeah, you shouldn't need to go to, like, the Facebook page, like, "Things I learned in seminary about transitional
right,
ministry."
right.
I think it's so important. And
Yeah.
and also just kind of going off of that context, I, am a cradle
Yep.
Presbyterian, but, I've been in Presbyterian communities in San Diego, outside of Seattle, in Northern New York, in Jersey, in Ohio, in Louisiana.
Mhm.
My life has taken me all over the US, and even
Yeah.
though I was part of these Presbyterian communities, each church was very different.
Yep.
had very different cultures, very different needs of the communities.
Mhm.
And going on to your point of the needs of our different seminaries in these geographic locations,
Mm.
I think you're totally correct in that
Mm.
we have these different experiences and contexts. Like, our country is so big. And
Yes.
we've seen that in the
Right.
past week, I think, with the shock that people
Right.
are having,
Yes.
um, over the diversity of views and the diversity of political positions
Yeah.
and the way that that has played out for us,
Totally.
for some people in very devastating ways,
Right.
and for others and not.
Right. Right. And part of, the response to this election, and this is going to get me to our next episode, right, is so much of the reflective work that I do about this is reading about things online, right?
Mm,
Is
mhm.
engaging with colleagues and friends through social media, through news media online. And I had this fascinating conversation with Bethany Peerbolt about the changing technologies and media that we use in ministry. So, what about that conversation? Do you think
Yeah,
is good to highlight?
I Bethany has an amazing ministry and
Mhm,
is really, um, you know, engaging online in a way that she isn't being forced to. I feel
mhm,
like, COVID forced so many communities to change in ways that they had been fighting and fighting and fighting.
mm,
And one thing that I really, really appreciated about Bethany's interview and her perspective
mm.
is she talked about social media in a positive way.
Yeah.
So many of our conversations is, like what a drag it is, the anxiety it produces, very valid critiques of
Mhm,
what it can do to us mentally, what it looks like to swipe and see someone's baby and swipe and see war and swipe and see politics and swipe and see a wedding, and
right.
just the backlashes that happens with that, I think, is very real.
Mm,
But there's also a lot of really positive connectivity that happens,
mhm,
and I loved that I got to engage with an interview that had such a positive light
mm.
to it. And
Yeah.
the way that it connects and gives the word and gives comfort, and accessibility to
Mhm.
people that do live online.
Right.
That's a big part. I remember when I was in campus
Yeah.
ministry, and every Sunday, we would get our notification on our phones
Mm.
that said, your screen time was
Huh.
3 hours, 4 hours. I had some students whose screen time was 11
Oh
hours.
my gosh.
Like that that's
Wow.
that's the day of,
Yeah.
and so if that's the reality
Yes.
of screen time,
Yes.
then we need these ministries that Bethany has to
Yeah.
engage with students who are living part of their lives online.
Yeah. Right. And one of the things that I really appreciated about that conversation was Bethany's wondering about these TikTok videos that she does, right, and that others do, if that is like a new parable form, right?
Yeah, yeah, I
Right?
loved that.
Can
She said that.
can we, if parables are truly meant to inspire us
Mhm,
to a deeper meaning of God's kingdom on earth,
mhm,
um, what about those short little videos subvert our cultural norms and expectations, right?
mhm.
And so I really appreciated Bethany
Oh, yeah,
um,
and
just
they're
that
short.
wisdom, right? Yes.
Like, parables are short, and these TikTok videos really, are impactful and short and condensed.
Yeah.
Eh, I thought that was
Yeah.
brilliant. I loved
Yeah.
that as well.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
there was this most recent conversation that I had with two seminary presidents, Dr. Victor Aloyo and Dr. Jose Irizarry of Columbia and Austin seminaries, respectively. What about that conversation stood out to you, Zoe?
Yeah, being in this role and getting to engage with, Jose and Victor more,
Mm,
has been amazing. I think the 2 of them are very inspiring individuals
mhm,
that truly brought the contextualization that we kind of
mm,
had spoken of
mm,
before to the forefront, and really talked about how, um we can have these expansive voices in our denomination, but we really need to understand the ways in which our churches and our communities are shifting,
Mm,
and that the churches that are growing the most are not the traditional communities that we think of. And what
mm,
does it look like to shift our conversations, shift our leaderships, shift um, our understanding of what's working in the church,
mm.
around different communities, specifically the Hispanic and Latino A communities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely right. And that's right. So we both started essentially with General Assembly this summer in July. And one
Mhm.
of the actions that General Assembly took is paying different, more attention to leadership and
Mhm.
Hispanic, Latino, Presbyterian communities. So I was grateful for the time that Jose and Victor were able to spend with me in that conversation and the stories of their childhood growing up in churches that formed them, right? Because that's the other thing as I think about theological education, right? It doesn't start when we walk onto a seminary campus. Theological
No. Yeah.
education starts from the moment that we are baptized into a community or that we start worshiping together or walk into an adult education or formation class or go on a mission trip together, right? That is all theological education that forms our understanding of self and our understanding of God. And that is a good thing, right?
Yeah, it really is, and understanding that, it isn't just contained to these seminaries. I think seminaries have a deep responsibility in
Mm,
spiritual formation,
mhm,
but, uh, most people don't go to seminary.
right?
Most people go to church. Most people have friends, and that is how they see and experience God, is through these places and these people. And
Absolutely.
so really understanding those different contexts is
Yeah.
so important.
That's great. So, Zoe, thanks for that walk through those 5 conversations that I had with folks. Was there a common theme
Mm.
that you noticed about those conversations that might be important to highlight for folks?
Yeah. I loved thinking and rewatching these
Mhm,
episodes. I watched them as they came out, and
mhm,
then preparing for this, watched them all together,
mhm,
and really being able to see how our churches and our seminaries are evolving into these diversity of voices.
mhm,
But there was this focus on not letting these diverse voices be siloed
mhm,
into like their own
mhm,
individual places, but really how we need to be keeping us all together and working together, whether that was David Lamont talking about the committees, and or
mhm,
Jose and Victor talking about contextualization and how we have to be intersectional
mhm,
in our progress and in our development as this church, and seeing how everyone was talking about the deep need of community
mhm,
and the deep need for diverse voices, and how they have to continually be working and intersecting together,
mhm.
and not allowing ourselves to be siloed as this person, and siloed as this voice, and siloed as this leader.
Yeah, I think that's a great word for us to hear
Mm,
in these days after um, political election and as we approach unknown futures heading into
mhm.
2025, that we don't have to do this alone,
Yeah.
uh, that we are here for one another. And
Yeah.
friends listening, watching, if Zoe and I can be of a resource to your ministries,
Mhm.
your congregations, I hope you know that we are always here to listen. If you need a listening ear, we are here to help support you and the leaders that you are cultivating in your congregations. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, I think the risk of burnout and the risk
yes,
of feeling alone, you
yes,
know, uh, the research has shown time and time
yes.
again that clergy have some of the largest experience of loneliness.
Hmm,
And yet, we know as
yeah,
community leaders that community is what's going to save us,
yeah,
and what's really going to bring us together. And so, yes,
absolutely.
exactly, Bill. If there's anything you or I can do for these communities,
Yeah.
please. We want to be there as
Absolutely.
a resource.
Yes, yes. So thinking about resources in the future, friends, Leading Theologically is going on a little break for the next few weeks over the holiday season. When we come back in 2025, we are going to have a new season where I will be talking with guests about a topic that I think is really important today, and that is reconciliation. And as these episodes are released in 2025 with these guests about reconciliation, we will also be releasing a conversation guide. So that can be a tool for you to use, hopefully, in your ministry contexts as we wrestle with
Mhm.
how God calls us to be one body in the world, witnessing to the light, love, grace, mercy of Jesus Christ. Um, so we hope that that resource that is coming will be valuable for you.
Yeah.
Here's our final question, Zoe. After that little plug about what's coming, it's what I have ended every episode with. And so, Zoë Garry, what is the best thing that you have heard lately?
Yes, I prepared for this.
Good job.
The best thing that I've heard was an interview
Mm,
with Lori Buchanan, and
mm,
she said she's a therapist,
mhm,
an author, and said, "What you are not changing, you're choosing."
hmm,
And that really has
mhm.
helped me in the past week
Yeah,
of just kind of the things that I feel like I have control over and the things that I feel like I have no control over. There are things in my life that
yeah,
I can directly change.
yeah.
Um, and there are things that I can directly choose. And really understanding my own participation in that has
Hmm,
been really helpful and healing
yeah.
the past.
Good. Thank you. Read that quote for us one more time.
Uh, what you are not changing, you are choosing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's going to sit with me for a while. Thank you. Thank you. Friends, thank you for joining us on this recap episode of Leading Theologically. This podcast is a ministry of the Theological Education Fund and of the Presbyterian Foundation. You can find out more about our work in ministry at presbyterianfoundation.org/TEF. We hope you have a blessed Advent and Christmas and Thanksgiving and New Year, and we'll look forward to being back together soon. Thanks, Zoe.
Thanks, Phil.